All right, media, thank you for joining our end of season media session with General Manager and Head Coach Derek Fisher. And thanks again for all your coverage last week of our 11 players exit interviews. Please use the raise hand function in the chat and we'll call on you that way. We'll start with Rashawn Haylock with Spectrum Sportsnet.
Hey, Coach. Good morning.
Morning, Rashawn.
When you look back on this season, what were the areas of growth for yourself as you handled both roles, and maybe some of the challenges that you foresaw, and then maybe some that you didn't see either?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like overall, my first year and our first year as an organization, like, being in this situation, things relatively went well from that perspective. I thought that myself and our staff and just as a collective, like, tried to keep the right balance in how we thought about making decisions in terms of our roster, putting the team together, balancing, as a coach, what you may want for now, because, as a coach, you're always thinking about winning today. But, from a management perspective, you have to balance today and tomorrow and next week and, and next month and beyond. And I thought overall, some of the decisions we made, it was with all of those components in mind. So, if there's anything that I would take away from this year, I think it would just be to continue to, regardless of role or title, really continue to, build quality relationships with our players, our staff, and as an organization, as a whole. We also were going through transition from a business perspective with, our president and COO, previously when Danita Johnson departing. And so, there's a lot of, growth and work to do just, as an organization that we're excited about and we're looking forward to this off season. Yeah, outside of that, to be honest, Rashawn, I think our players just deserve the credit for, going through the change and the evolution with us. And, we've always tried to have, an open door policy in terms of communication and making sure that people know and trust that we're all striving to get better, that they can bring concerns, feedback, thoughts to the table, and that we're going to try to address them and move forward together. So I thought for the most part, we accomplished the foundation of that standard this season, and we're hoping to build on it going forward.
How exciting is it for you along those lines that what you're building, your vision, that it's seen, right, and understood by the members of that team? Like, they all spoke about it last week in terms of how they're in lockstep. They sort of see your vision. They sort of see some of them talked about the long game, so to speak. They see that, they understand that. How exciting is that for you as you head into this off season and get ready for next year?
No, it's exciting and humbling at the same time. We're very hungry and motivated to keep pushing ourselves to get better. That's what this whole process is about. We knew going into a transition into, a new era, a new way of doing business on and off the court, that it was going to be hard, that there would be challenges and adversities. And I think as a group, we didn't anticipate the level of injuries and adversity that we'd face on the court. But I think our players still came to work every day with the expectation that they had to buy into what we were doing, to continue to work hard, to continue to play for one another. And they got that accomplished. and they deserve a lot of credit. So we're for sure, we don't we're not happy necessarily that we aren't still playing basketball, but we are excited and motivated for what is to come, what we're creating and what we're working on and building together. And we're striving to create an organization that isn't just measured by wins and losses and playoff appearances. Like, this is bigger than that. And hopefully that's what our players are also speaking to when they say the long game. Like, it's how we impact the community here in Los Angeles. It's how young girls of color and women see our players, being dynamic and being great and being leaders in the community and fighting for social justice and police reform and women's rights. And there's more to it than just how many games you won this year. We're going to get that part accomplished. That's what this organization always has done. And we're going to be successful in the court. But we also want to make a difference here in LA. It's a crowded landscape, a lot of great professional sports teams here. Obviously, Angel City's coming online soon. We're happy for them that there's another professional women's team coming to town, but we have a lot of work to do to make sure people know who we are, and not just because we win, because we make a difference, and because it's another way to show girls and women that they matter. And that's the number one priority that we always have to have, regardless of basketball wins and losses.
Thanks, Rashawn. We'll go to Tukni Nguyen with the LA Times.
Hey, Derek, good to see you. Happy to see you dressed up for your exit interview.
No, I appreciate it. It's been, a couple of years of polos and sweatshirts. So I figured that, I'd put on a shirt today for the first time in a long time.
It's good that it still fits. Not a lot of people can say that after COVID. Yeah, I mean, you come into the season and you rebuild this roster for the new era of the Sparks, and you had this vision of what you wanted the team to be this year. And unfortunately, because of all the injuries, it didn't quite play out on the court. So just how frustrating or disappointing was that to not even get to test this vision on the court because of some of those unexpected adversities that came up?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely moments, where you feel that way, right? You feel like, this can't be happening. Like, when we set out to create a roster with increased versatility, athleticism, at the wing positions, multiple ball handlers, decision makers, playmakers, being able to move pieces around the court offensively so that we could be more dynamic, so that we could get to the free throw line, become a better three-point shooter, getting more threes on the basket, being able to get downhill and get to the rim. And, we feel like we had that roster on paper put together. As you stated, didn't come together that way on the court, due to some things that you just can't control in sports. Injuries are a part of it. But also when you miss the significant players that we missed in terms of the amount of games, it just made it a really tough and uphill battle the whole way. But I think when we look back on it, we're going to see that it forced us to grow maybe more than we would have, had we been healthy. I think part of this transition for us is separating and disconnecting ourselves from being so reliant on who the player is, right? The name on the back of her jersey, and relying on that to get it done for us, as opposed to building habits, creating a way to play, a way to practice, how we approach our business and our work every day, that no matter who it is, no matter who we draft, sign, trade for, bring in, that there's a standard that you just automatically know when you play for the Los Angeles Sparks. If you're not interested in getting there, don't go, don't come. That's what we're trying to build. And I think this year, despite not being in postseason play, this group, we were able to establish a lot of those standards and expectations for how things need to be done here. We have a long way to go, but we're not going to base it on whether or not this player's here or that player's here. Like, there's just going to be a standard of excellence that, that we demand, that we create here. And, we're confident that the results on the court will be there when we're able to have, a relatively healthy team and roster. That's just, in sports, there's no way around it. The healthy teams are the ones that are most successful. And, that's something that we also have to make sure we figure out this offseason is how to make sure our players can come back in as healthy as possible physically and mentally to be prepared for the intensity that comes with a really, pressure packed, 34, 36 games, however many games you have to play. Ultimately, we have to physically and mentally be ready to go.
And if you could put your GM hat on briefly, when you're looking forward to free agency, what are some of the priorities that you're looking at for this round?
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to look for opportunities to improve our team and our roster. Like, that's, you win the championship and you still have that responsibility. So that'll never change. I think for us, it kind of is connected to the question you just asked, right? Where it's going to be difficult to truly evaluate, okay, were we really not as good in this area, or were we as good in this area as we think we are, just due to the personnel being out and so many games missed with key players. So when you look at our rebounding, for example, when you think about Shanae and Nneka and Maria Vadiva and Jasmine Walker, who a lot of people still, just don't quite understand how talented of a player she is, but also like her rebounding in college was, that was something that we zeroed in on in the draft last year. So when you look at those four players from a rebounding perspective, okay, do we need to go into free agency to improve our rebounding? Or if those four players are healthy and all playing and available, can we be a better rebounding team? And so with that being said, like in free agency, definitely, that's going to be a focal point. How do we secure, more possessions with rebounds? Even though we still have a great defense. Our defense been in the top three these past 3 seasons, and we don't see that changing. But we feel like we can be the best in the league if we can clean up more possessions with rebounds. And then also your perimeter shooting always has to be really high to win in basketball these days. Like you can't be a subpar shooting team, be inefficient offensively and still find success. So, but is that something that can just be cured in free agency? It depends, but just as much as free agency is a priority in the offseason, developing our players and helping them get better is also equally a priority. So that's going to be a focal point, along with, again, always trying to evaluate, the roster, make decisions on, what players, what your needs are. It could be a very interesting free agency process in terms of, players being on the move potentially, but we're definitely going to focus on the core group of players that we have coming back at this point, making sure they're getting better and they're healthy, and places where we can improve. We're definitely going to take a look at it.
Chris Camello with Nightcast Media.
Good morning, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you?
Doing well. Let me just first off by saying it was a pleasure covering you again for the second straight year, even if it was virtual like this.
No, I appreciate it, Chris. I appreciate you and everybody, really riding with us this year. It was an interesting year with, felt like we were going to be able to do more things in person this year. And,
right.
We weren't able to, but we appreciate the support. Appreciate you guys always tapping in and checking in with us, and looking forward to hopefully being able to do more of it in person in 22.
Absolutely. That's the plan. Yeah, talking about the challenges this year, was there any unexpected challenges that came from having that dual role? And was there anybody that you reached out to kind of maybe help navigate through what was a difficult season and the season of transition?
No, I think not necessarily unexpected challenges, but just being a human being, like it's always difficult to have those conversations around whether a player is being traded or, you're releasing a player and letting her know that, you're going to go in a different direction or, make a move that for her, of course, doesn't feel like it's the right thing. So, having that responsibility, it isn't easy. And so that's not unexpected, but it's a reality of having that additional hat on. It's your responsibility to be a leader in that regard. So that was a bit of a transition, that not really proved to be challenging because it was unexpected, but there is a human aspect to this job that you can't forget. And so that's going to always be an area that I want to strive to grow in and make sure that regardless of what the news is, what the information or message is, that a player, her family, her agent, they feel like we're always respectful and have a level of compassion about how difficult it is to be in this business and do this job. And that even if we're making a decision that doesn't feel right to them at that time, they can recognize that we're human as well, and we may not always get it right, but that's what we need to do at the time. I read and study and communicate with a number of different, current coaches, former coaches, leaders, without sharing names because that, it's not necessary to do it out of respect for them. But always looking for ways to get better and improve. And, in the W, you do have a handful of folks that share the dual role by title. But there's no question that, the teams that are, successful, it's a team. It's a collective group that's getting it done in the right ways. And so, even if there's a person that, by title is the coach or the GM or the assistant coach or, director of community relations, like it's still the entire group that's making these things happen on and off the court. So, I try to keep that in mind all the time, that it's, although I'm, front facing oftentimes, I'm still a part of a community and a group here with the Sparks that, we're all in this together, and, we have a responsibility to build something successful together. And that's the way I'm going to try to continue to lead.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. We'll go to Sabrina Merchant with SB Nation.
Hey, Derek, thanks for taking the time today. So you guys signed a lot of players to 2-year contracts this past offseason, and I'm curious if that was, with a design to have some continuity heading into this next season. Like, do you feel like this group needs some time to build together, or are there things that you think can only be addressed externally?
Yeah, no, it was definitely by design. I think, with us, transitioning into, a new era and a new phase of Sparks basketball, like it was important to try and establish a core group of players, starting with NECA that, could go on this 2-year journey with us as we charted this new course. And, we felt like to ask more of players to go in this new direction with us wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. So, 2 years was, we felt like the right number to be able to say to players and their agents, we recognize that this is going to be new. This is different than maybe what people have seen before. But go on this ride with us, go on this journey of change and evolution with us, and give us a chance to show you over this first year and a half of what's possible and what we can be capable of. And we want to include you in that process. And if things are going well and they're going in the direction that we all see it can go, then we can have the appropriate conversations about, staying together longer. And so, by doing that, we do believe that, that carryover from year 1 to year 2 with a core group that will have been through the mud together a little bit. Had some shared and common experiences as a team. That's what the real foundation of success is built on in sports. The years that you don't get it done together, those become the seeds in the soil to the years that you do. And so, we feel like we have a core group of players under contract for next year that, they have a shared experience from this past year that should lead to the conversations and the improvement and the change that's necessary to be better next year than we were this year. And part of that is just being healthy, but also part of that is being better as a coach in terms of preparation, and better as players in terms of preparation for a season and getting better so that your game, is able to help the team more. So, definitely by design, but, we also recognize that we don't necessarily want to leave ourselves with another round of, 10 players in free agency at the same time either. So there's still a lot for us to think about as we look forward to this season and what goes beyond 22. So we'll have to continue to have those discussions and make decisions on what we feel like are the right things to do to make sure we can start to build some of that continuity that you mentioned. The best teams in sports have it, and the W is not always easy to do, but we have to now, figure it out under this new CBA, how to build continuity so that, when you look around the league, you look at Connecticut, you look at what Washington's been able to establish the last few years, Seattle, now Vegas, even Chicago's core group of players, 3, 4, 5 years together, that makes a difference. And that's where we want to get to as we build something new here.
Thanks, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Sabrina. We'll go to John W. Davis with Southern California News Group.
Good morning, Coach Fisher. How you feeling?
Doing good, John. How you doing?
Thank you so much. So speaking of the CBA, I have 2 questions. I asked the first one first. So as a GM, do you wish you could have lottery protected that 2022 first round pick that you traded for Jasmine Walker? Was that even a possibility?
No, I think there are some limitations to the way those things work in terms of the WNBA CBA, and protecting picks or not being able to protect picks. But we don't regret making the move to get Jasmine last year at number 7, and looking at the draft class for 21 and 22. We really felt strongly in going into last year's draft that Jasmine would be as good or better than anybody we get in the draft this year or next year. And so the chance to land her in the 21 draft, that was our protection, right? We didn't anticipate her going down with the injury. We feel very strongly that, although we respect Michaela Onyewede's year and the season that she had, but we feel Jasmine would have been very competitive, if not the best rookie in the league this year. We were only able to get a glimpse of her performance in the preseason, but we feel good about the way we measured our decision with going after Jasmine right away, and not waiting for this year's draft in terms of where we would finish. And then also, putting ourselves in position with the 10th pick, because some of the conversations around the addition of Gabby Williams, those things didn't just fall out of the sky. There had been ongoing possibilities around being able to work something out to get Gabby. So being able to utilize the number 10 pick after securing Jasmine with number 7, that allowed us to turn into Gabby's addition. So, we feel like without a first round draft pick necessarily this year, having Jasmine and then being able to add Gabby to our roster for next year, I don't think you can get better than that in the draft, regardless of who comes out of school. And there are going to be some really talented players that come out in 22. But Jasmine and Gabby, we feel will be clearly better than anybody coming out of school.
And with that said, my second question is more conceptual and just about the idea of giving yourself and players grace as everyone navigated, their second consecutive WNBA season during the pandemic. Is that something that you've thought about and you've talked to just about, giving yourself grace and giving the players grace that, like, if we would have talked about this in 2019, nobody would have expected us to be in this position that we're in 2021.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point to make. Sometimes as competitors, it's hard to give yourself the grace in the room, to, have some reason why maybe you didn't achieve or accomplish what you feel like you're capable of. But managing the stressors and the variables that come with, playing elite, basketball at the highest levels, to try and figure that out, in the midst of a global pandemic is not easy. But while we for sure need to give ourselves room and have a level of compassion and space for each other, I think we recognize that our fans and the folks that work in our arenas and in our buildings and, people around the world have, also been, navigating this pandemic, oftentimes in much more difficult circumstances, right? Like we're grateful and thankful to be in a business that, has continued to go and be active during the pandemic. Many people have faced furloughs and layoffs and their jobs aren't returning. So we're very lucky in that regard. And so while we try to give ourselves some room to be mindful of how difficult it's been for us, I think we have to also keep in mind that, especially for people here in Southern California, and LA County has been really hard hit by COVID-19, that people have had it much more difficult and harder than us. And, we just want to always remain thankful and mindful of what other people are going through as well.
Thank you, John. I see two more hands for today. We'll go to Michael Matthew with the Good News Network.
Hey, what's up, Coach? How's everything going?
Going well, Mikhail. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. So, with you being a backcourt player for your career, I just want to know your thoughts on your backcourt play this year with like Erica and Taya, and then what things are you looking going forward from those players as well? Like you saw the growth of Taya from the bubble into this season. What are you looking for her to take that next step and her and Erica to continue to grow?
Yeah, great question. I think, first, like for, Erica and Taya, like, it's essentially like being two players that, every night pretty much showed up and had their uniform on and were ready to go, regardless of how they performed. Coop had the 1-game suspension after the, stepping on the court in Minnesota. But other than that, she played every night and tried her best to help her team win. Erica was 32 for 32, and that's not an easy thing to do for a professional athlete. Nia Coffey also played all 32 games. Brittany Sykes, I think, played in all 32 games. So, they all deserve the credit for that. And then from there, as you drill down into their performance, I think Erica, coming here, learning a new way of playing in terms of what we expected, how to fit on a new roster. It wasn't easy for her. Like, you sign as a free agent and you're looking around and there's NECA and there's Shanae and there's Christy and Simone Augustus and all these people that were, on our roster going into training camp. And then all of it, our roster looks very different, coming out of training camp. We traded Sydney, Nia Coffey's on the team, Bria Holmes on the team, that, Rella's on the team. Like, that team looks a little different. And then, the injuries start to hit, right away early on. So I think Erica and Taya did a tremendous job trying to figure out how to navigate and run a team that was constantly changing and evolving and didn't always have, the ammunition, the firepower to do sometimes what you need done as a perimeter player, as a guard. When you're trying to run and manage a team, it's important to know and understand what you're working with, how to make sure people are in position to be successful. So, I think they both did a lot of good things, and they're both areas for growth, and part of that is myself and Erica, Taya, and Christy as well, as we were a different team with Christy on the court this year. We were essentially 500, little over 500, it's 10-9 in 19 games that she played in. And so we're a different team when Christy's on the court. And so, yeah, we just have to continue to put that work in the off season to get better in terms of their individual games, but also continuing to build our relationship, our communication, make sure that I'm being clear on, what it is I'd like to see from them from the position, but also continuing to empower them to trust their instincts and rely on the work that they've put in. But it starts with putting the work in. And I think both players are excited to do that this offseason. And they're both really motivated to be better for their team than they were this year. And that's exciting. I think Ted can make a big jump, from year 2 to year 3. But, to be frank, like, the year in the bubble doesn't fully represent what it's like to be in the WNBA. And I think that Taya found more of that out this past season when you're traveling from city to city, you're playing and visiting buildings, you're playing against different personnel with more players, playing this season compared to in the bubble and with the players that opted out and weren't there. So, I think she's poised to make another big jump next season. And hopefully we'll be able to do our part to make sure, our team is constructed to allow for all of our players to be significantly better, and still find the ways to play together as a team.
Thanks. Last hand, I see John has one more.
Yeah, a point of clarification. Do you have the ability to protect a lottery pick?
Do you have the ability to say it again?
Yes.
Kind of broke up a little
Do
bit.
you, as the GM, do you have the ability to protect a lottery pick like people do in the NBA? Do you have that ability as a WNBA GM?
No, I will look and see. I think we've had some of these conversations with with some teams, but I do not think currently that ability exists.
Okay.
I guess I'll make sure of that. I'll make sure that Eli confirms that with you, but I'm pretty sure that ability doesn't exist. You're even limited in how far out you can go. I mean, teams in the NBA can go out 3-4 years or more sometimes, in trading picks for 2025 first round picks or second round picks. And in the W at this point you can only go ahead 1 year until a certain date in the calendar where you can start to talk about the year after that. So things that I think will continue to evolve over time, but right now that opportunity doesn't exist.
All right, thank you everyone so much for your coverage this season. Appreciate it, and we'll send out a recording.